This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for an entertainment interview. And this is being sponsored by EMPKT. They are a professional group that finds me musicians like Nick. And Nick, I'm going to let you pronounce your last name because I will mess it up.
Sure. It's Stefanacci. It's a whole bunch of syllables, maybe a silent Q in there or something, but just a little Italian.
A little Italian. And when I read the bio, I was so interested in doing this because you come from a music genre that I absolutely love. And I have to thank my brother for introducing me to jazz. Um,
Cool.
but the interesting part is jazz is not just a single format. I mean, it is a huge spectrum of music.
Yeah, it's really widespread nowadays. And the use of technology and just the access to all this information is really, I think, actually making the music world a lot closer. In fact, of how genres are kind of cross fusing and cross redefining things. Back in the day, you would have to travel to a localized area to hear a specific type of jazz or classical music. And now today, I mean, we have access to everything. So like we have all this overlapping cross-pollination stuff going on. And like you said, jazz is really, it's a really wide spectrum right now, which is really cool.
Exactly. So, what got you, first of all, involved in music? I mean, did you have a family background or did you see somebody performing somewhere and said, oh, that's exactly who I want to be?
Yeah, it was definitely family background. Basically all my family on like my father's side, the Stefanacci side, perform and played. Not, like local things, nothing big. So in New Jersey, when you get to fourth grade, that's where music education typically starts. And so it wasn't a fact of are you going to join band? It was what instrument are you playing next year? And I was fortunate to pick saxophone right out of the gate. And I was also blessed to have an amazing elementary school band director, who I later became really good friends with him, was one of my mentors because he actually moved up to the high school when I was in the high school as a student. And then I learned really about him as a player and all of his success. And he took me under his wing and I mean, we would hang out every day at lunch, my senior year, and we would just talk music and just really kind of inspired me. So I was really fortunate with my early on education in music, and that was awesome.
Well, it's interesting. Both my brothers played clarinet the same way. They started in fourth grade and moved up. And when I hit fourth grade, the clarinet was handed to me. And Mr. Scanlon, a wonderful band teacher, said to me after about 3 minutes of us trying to play, he said, Karen, pretend you're playing the clarinet. Do not
Ah,
play it. And I
okay.
looked at him and I said, why? What am I doing wrong? He said, I don't have enough time to teach you. So
Oh, no.
my experience playing the clarinet was just holding it and going like this all the time.
No, no, no.
So I didn't even have to go home and practice. So that
Right.
that was a good thing.
Okay, okay.
Um, so you played saxophone, and saxophone is one instrument that we hear in jazz, all the time. Um, so when did you finally think that, you know, this is something I really want to do, and maybe I'll sit on the street corner and pick up a few pennies, but I'm going to play the saxophone and play jazz.
Yeah, I was I definitely think I was born with some natural gift. And that, like my dad will tell the story until he dies that, when even as a fourth grader, I didn't come home squeaking. I didn't come home, not being able to control the sound. So there was a little bit of talent, from whether, God given or from my parents. And then, that kind of was exposed by my elementary band teacher. He said, he kept on pushing me and pushing me. And then finally I got hooked up with my private teacher in sixth grade as a middle school student. And, it was that relationship with Mr. Frank Elmo all throughout high school that really hooked me into playing music. I mean, he was incredible. Him and like my band director Chuck Sastre, they were really the two big influences on my career. And they would take me to gigs. As a senior in high school, Chuck would sign me out of school and take me to shows that he was playing out in Long Island, New York City. And so he showed me the ropes, and then Mr. Elmo would invite me to gigs and I would sit in with him. And then, when I really was sold on it, was as a 16-year-old. I had the incredible opportunity to sit in and perform with the then rising Derek Trucks, who is now part of the Allman Brothers and
Right.
Tedeschi Trucks. So I had the opportunity to sit in with him in a small club in Teaneck, New Jersey. And I'm 16 years old. My parents had to drive me to the gig, and I get to the club, and the line is around the block. Around the block. And I had the opportunity of just walking to the front of that line, looking at the bouncer and saying, I'm playing tonight. He let me in, and everyone was like, well, who is that? And that sold me, and then from there out, I thought it was easy. I thought it was, oh, every time you play, you just have people line up around the block for you. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful feeling. So, obviously that went real low, real fast, and I learned the truth behind it. But it's one of those, it's just such a natural high, that you can't replicate in this world. And unless you've experienced that stuff, then you don't know what you're missing. But yeah, for me, it was that moment.
Well, and you were living in the perfect area too, between New Jersey and New York, and having mentors who saw your talent. Like I said, Mr. Scanlon knew I had no talent, and so he wasn't going to mentor me, and that was probably the absolute right thing.
Okay.
But it didn't take my love away from music.
Right.
And in fact, as I think a middle schooler, I sort of found my voice, and so choir was my thing.
Awesome.
But I never saw myself as being out there performing. It was
Right.
just
Right.
something that, hey, I'm enjoying this, and I'm appreciating different styles of music, because in choir you didn't have a choice. You
No, yeah, you get
whatever
exposed
they
to
told you.
everything. Right. Right. That's amazing. I love it.
So as a teenager, you were sitting in on some gigs. When did you finally go out on your own and say, okay, I'm ready?
Yeah, that started in college as an undergrad. I had the opportunity just to put together like a really small jazz quartet, and then I would go out and I would just find gigs, local bars, restaurants. We had, it was crazy because at that time I was able to procure like several residencies where we were playing like once a month at these different local bars and restaurants. Um, and I mean, and that was some of the best learning and education that I received as a young band leader. Even though there were quartets and we were playing standards, it was all right. How do I negotiate things? How do I manage a band? How do I make sure they get fed? How do I make sure they get paid? So it was a lot of those lessons on the job, you could say, that really kind of taught me that I could do this, and I could do this at a much higher level. I just have to keep working for it and keep striving for it.
So behind you, I see what appears to be album covers.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
assuming those are all your albums.
Yeah, so actually, believe it or not, we're actually sitting in my school office. It's a school day today, so I teach high school band.
Okay.
So I get to give back a little bit, which is awesome. And most of these albums are actually, they were given to me by Chuck Sastre, my first band teacher, by his wife when he passed, because we lost him suddenly at the age of 49 to
Mm.
pulmonary fibrosis. And so and most of the albums have his name on it, you know, his signature, because they traveled with him all over. And so it's just a little reminder that he's kind of there with me
I love
on this
that.
journey, which is really, yeah, which is really special, really cool.
So tell me about your music. It sounds like you have written and performed your own music. Um, it's interesting. I have a brother who is a producer in the industry, and my youngest son is a vocalist, but he
Cool.
writes lyrics.
Nice.
And when he wants the music for, because he doesn't play an instrument, he does it all in his head.
Wow.
Almost nothing gets written down. And then he'll go sit with a musician and say, okay, I want you to hear this sound, and he'll vocalize it. And he'll say,
Right.
and I want a tinge of this. I don't know how anybody does that.
Cool, cool.
Where do you get your sounds from? How do you know how to put it all together?
You know, I think my sound is really a great balance of everything I've been exposed to. And I've been very blessed to have studied classical saxophone as an undergrad and jazz saxophone, and then have a master's in contemporary performance. So my exposure, I mean, goes all the way back to, you know, playing flute sonatas and duets in classical music, all the way up to present day. And I write with those characteristics in mind, and I try to blend all of that together. So when people ask me, like, you know, what my sound is or whatever, the closest thing I could say is Steely Dan mashed up with like Maceo Parker or David Sanborn. So my original stuff tends to usually feature a horn section. It will feature vocalists, but I'll also do instrumental stuff. Um, and then I try to blend all of this inspiration in my life, and um I really try to write with colors in mind. Kind of something that you would find like from Debussy, in that French Impressionism period, where it was, okay, what can we evoke orally through music? And I really try to balance all those characteristics while trying to give something that is still kind of in the pop world, where it can be received by masses, where it's not so closed off, like, oh, if you're not into this, you really won't understand it. And so, you know, my writing, it's interesting because artists that really affect me and influence me are artists that always try to push their next album and push the boundaries of it. So I constantly, you know, go back to the Beatles, you know, and say, all right, from album to album, what did they do? What did they try to accomplish? And if you listen through my catalog, I hope I accomplish that with my stuff. I always try to push something further, always try to take it a little bit different of an angle, while still trying to keep it in that jazz pop area where people can understand it and dissect it a little bit. Um, but yeah, you know, always trying to push things forward, always trying to evolve as a producer, as a writer, as a performer. Um, I don't like the status quo. I don't like just sitting back. Well, this is what I write, so I'm gonna write more of that. I always trying to learn, always trying to push. So that's the goal.
And you know, in today's world, I think as an artist of any kind, you have to do that, because otherwise society looks at, okay, I've already heard it, I've already seen it, you know, I'll move on to something else, because we're all restless. But
Oh
when
God.
things are constantly evolving, it's like, oh, I got to go back and hear, you know, what Nick's doing today,
Yeah.
because I've already heard what he did yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, if you go back to my debut album, 26 years, it sounds nothing like what I'm releasing with Secrets.
Sure.
Um, which is cool. And you know, people ask me about the whole like streaming platform and all that stuff, and writing singles. And I do that. You have to, you know, if you want to play in the game, you have to
Sure.
play by those rules. But for me, there's something about releasing an album or like an EP, because it's a specific time period in my life as a writer, as a producer, as a performer, that is captured in this timepiece.
Right.
And that's cool, because my 26 years, that I was in a different space altogether than where I am, for Secrets right now. And to have those time capsules, in time, cemented in time, they don't get lost with singles. You release a single, and then all of a sudden 4 months later another single, so I'm into that. I'm into the whole like album EP thing.
Well, like I said, our society is totally different. I grew up with vinyl. There was no such thing when I first started listening to music. I don't even think we had 8-track cassettes.
Wow.
Everything was on vinyl. Um, and my husband and I were laughing about it the other day because about 8 years ago, a little over that, when we moved, we had an old turntable. And I said, "What are we keeping this for? It just gathers dust." And
Yeah.
he goes, "Yeah, but look at all these albums we have." And I said,
Right.
"We're never going to listen to them again." So what did we do? We sold them all on eBay.
Wow.
And today
Wow.
I'm sitting here going, "Oh my God, why did we do that?" Um,
Right.
but, you know, times are changing. So I do listen to things electronically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and I will say that I prefer listening to a performer in a small venue. And I'm assuming a lot of your playing are in small venues because New York and New Jersey have a lot of places.
Yeah, pre-pandemic, it was awesome. It was really awesome. We had residencies at BB King's in Midtown, and also like the Bitter End. So like two really extreme club choices.
Sure.
But we were playing there once a month. And it was really cool. It was really rocking and rolling. And then, everything stopped for everybody, and you try to evolve in that situation, and stay relevant, stay mentally focused. I think it was so easy
Sure.
during that time for people to be lost. So you try to stay mentally in shape. Um, and then, post pandemic, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to find gigs. Everything has changed. Most, if not all of my contacts in New York are either not at that job, that club closed down, they
Yeah.
moved out of town. So, believe it or not, actually I have my first full band show November 4th coming up in Jersey. And that's since the pre-pandemic, but you just keep going forward and pushing it, everything, because you really have to. if
And,
if you
and
stop, then
I think those of us who love music, we really want to see it come back in those venues.
right,
I know here in the Cleveland area, again, you know, pandemic obviously shut everybody down. Um, and there were so many online concerts going on. But the sad part about some of them was that some of those musicians didn't have the quality equipment. And so people were listening and going, I thought he was really great. And
yep,
have you listened to it? And some of them actually just said, "I'm no longer in the business."
wow,
Luckily, the really good ones, they are, but
yeah,
like you, they're still struggling to find that place where they can perform. And we have more people who are coming out of the woodwork every day.
right, right.
So, as a teacher full time, when do you have time to do all this?
You have to love it. It needs to be one of those things that you literally cannot live without, because like you just said, where do you find the time? And I mean, for the school year, like 10 months of the year, I survive off of coffee, and
Get it?
other caffeinated drinks, because there's just, even though you get to sleep a little bit, I feel it's not good rest, because your mind is constantly working in the background. What do I have to do tomorrow to make sure I have this release ready, or what do I have to do next week for that performance, or whatever it is. So I mean, you're just going, you're going nonstop for 10 months. And you better love it. You better strap on the boots real tight. And it's great because it's what I love to do. It's who I am, so I can't complain. As long as I can chase it, I'll chase it. It's a beautiful thing.
So, do you look for the next musician in your classes?
You know, that's interesting. And the way I really try to approach teaching high school bands, is 99% of my students won't go on to a field of music. So then how do I make this experience relevant for them? And so we talk a lot about life and about the skills of being a musician, how that can apply to whatever you want to chase in this world. And I think those lessons are timeless, and actually crucial for their development, especially out of the pandemic. So many of our younger students are really behind developmentally. And that's mentally, that's socially.
Right.
So how do we try to take this time to kind of catch them up a little bit and say, yeah, you guys, you're ready for college. You're ready for the next step, and then take those skills that you learned in band and apply them to whatever your field of choice is. And then, like that 1% student, we really try to take under our wings and say, what are you thinking about for college? How can we prepare you for it? Is there a plan B? How are you going to pay for bills? How are you going to find healthcare? How are you going to do all that stuff that unfortunately all the music schools at the university level want to neglect? They just want you to sign on and pay over checks, but they're not worried if you have healthcare. If something bad happens, then what? So I really try to, empower my students with that knowledge. And it's hard because, like that 14 to 18-year age range, they know everything by the time they're 18.
Well,
Um,
and
so
and you have to have the right people involved in your life to
yeah,
understand. My son initially got a scholarship to the University of Akron in their music department, and
cool.
that's what he wanted so badly. But when he started, he didn't realize all the classes he had to take that he had no interest in. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he he struggled. And I remember he went to the dean and said something to the dean, and the dean said, just suck it up. And basically, he started to fail out because he was also looking for what also happens if I don't make it, or how do I put food on my table while I'm
Yeah.
trying to make it. And all he was being told was, here's some music theory that you got to learn.
Yep.
And uh, as he struggled, his dad and I finally said to him, we're pulling you out and we're going to give you another chance.
Yeah.
Get a business degree, because he had a business mind to begin with.
Okay. Yeah.
Get your
Yeah.
business degree and enjoy your music on the side. And if you
That's right.
develop it, and his true love, in addition to music, was sports. And so he took that business degree. He's working in sports. He's still writing music. And it's like he now understands it all, how we can put it all together.
Yeah.
I think if
Absolutely.
he had stayed and graduated, I think he would have been burned out very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible, studying music at the college level is it's intense, and it has to be. There's so many great players out there that if you're not 120% vested in it, then they
Exactly.
really don't have a place in it.
So you have something new coming out. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, actually, next Friday, October 6th, is the release of my first Christmas single. This is called Christmas Eve. And you know, this is definitely an R&B Donny Hathaway inspired tune. Has a great vocalist, my friend Rich Aveo, doing vocals on it. And, you know, of course I wrote the song, so it's special to me or whatever, but um I try to be as objective as I can be with my music. And um I think this song will be on people's playlists for the holidays from now until whenever. I think it fits right in there, in that Mariah Carey, in that Donny Hathaway, in that Bruce Springsteen, in that whole set. I think you could throw Christmas Eve on there, and it will fit, which is great. I'm excited about it.
So how can our listeners follow you? Is there a
Sure.
website?
Yeah, the best thing is Nick Stefanacci Music. And on that site, you'll have all the access to all of my social media stuff. Obviously my Spotify, and in every place that you can to listen to it. Join the mailing list, and hopefully we'll be out in Cleveland soon and doing some shows, and
I
then
would
come
love
see me.
that. Absolutely love that. Also,
Yeah.
I'd love to see you get up to Saratoga Springs and play at Cafe Lena.
Okay. Okay. All right. Cafe Lena. Okay. I don't know
Yes.
that club.
So
I'll look
Cafe
it up.
Lena is the oldest coffee house still in existence.
Oh, geez. How
And
awesome is
yeah,
that? Okay.
60 plus years. Yeah.
And Saratoga is beautiful. So that's
Oh,
a good excuse to get up there.
yeah, it is beautiful, and the music never stops up there.
Oh,
So
awesome. Awesome.
at least go up there and listen to some great music too.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll take a look. That's awesome. I love it. I love it.
Okay. Well, hopefully you'll come to Cleveland soon, and we will be posting this with all your information so that all of our listeners can follow you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you, Nick. Have a great day.
You
Bye
too. Be
bye.
well. Ciao.